corn farmers of the world. Welcome to another episode of Lizzie's Jungle. Today the topic is tissue cultures. I ran a story on my Instagram yesterday asking if you guys knew about tissue culture alocasias, and most people didn't know about them. So I wanted to make this video so that you guys could be aware of the differences and kind of understand what this means for you and what this means for alocasias in general. So to better understand tissue cultures, we must first know what it is. So according to Wikipedia, plant tissue culture is a collection of techniques used to maintain or grow plant cells, tissues, or organs under sterile conditions on a nutrient culture medium of known composition. It is widely used to produce clones of a plant in a method known as micropropagation. So that's according to Wikipedia. I watched a few videos on YouTube so I could understand it a little better, and basically what they're doing is under a very sterile environment, kind of like a science lab type setup. They are chopping up plants. Think of like nodes, sometimes just tissues from the leaves depending on the species. So once they've taken the tissue from the plant, whether it be from a node, the rhizome, a leaf, a stem, they put it into a petri dish, and the petri dish has a nutrient special mixture in there that is sterile but will help the plant to produce roots and form leaves. From what I understand, there's different types of hormones that you can add. Some hormones specifically for roots, some hormones specifically for leaves, and so on. So I'm not an expert on this, I'm just telling you what I learned through my own research, but Google is a great place to find out more. I want to share this information because I don't think that a lot of people are aware. I shared a little bit about it on my Instagram stories, and a lot of people were surprised and had a lot of questions. So I'll start by saying that these plants will produce corms. Since we are all in this little group of Alocasia community because of corms, I want to reassure you that tissue culture plants do produce corms. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of tissue culture alocasias is because of the lack of rhizome. So when you're doing a tissue culture, you're basically creating a plant from a piece of another. It is not at all like a corm, so I want to show you. So I have this rhizome here, and you can see that it is growing a different plant on the rhizome. So this is the plant that is growing straight out of the rhizome, and this is the plant that is growing above the rhizome. So I'm going to break it off. And as you can see, now I have a whole plant. However, this plant does not have a rhizome. So even though these two plants are from the same mother, this plant can be saved easier because of how much larger the rhizome is. If a piece of it rots, you still have some of it left to try to revive it. Whereas if a piece of this rots, it doesn't really have much plant space there to save it. The roots will rot, and then immediately the space will rot with it. Where this, the roots will rot, but there's still rhizome to save. So that is a pretty easy representation of what a tissue culture means as far as plant care. My dragon's breath has declined in health since I got it. It used to have about 7 leaves, and now it's down to 3. The soil cannot stay moist enough. I discussed this with a follower of mine who messaged me, who shares the same issue with their nebula that they just got. They said that they can't keep the nebula hydrated long enough for it to be happy, and it keeps declining in health, and the new leaf has come out kind of not good. So if you've never seen a real rhizome, this is what it looks like. It's about 2 to 3 inches of solid root building piece of plant. So if a piece of this rots, you still have so much more to help you save this plant. Whereas tissue culture plants don't have that. Tissue culture plants have nothing but this tiny little stick coming out of it. So it's just the stem and the roots. There is no rhizome in here. That is just a tiny piece of plant, but all of the roots are growing from the base of the plant. A normal rhizome has all of these little ridges and nodes that you can visibly see. The corms form directly on the rhizome and therefore tend to have a stronger umbilical cord, like a thicker chunk holding it, and the corm tends to be bigger, juicier with a regular plant. If you have a tissue culture plant, then your corms start from underneath the base of the plant. So right where the plant ends, it shoots off all of these roots and all of the corms. So the corms tend to have really frail umbilical cords, and sometimes when you try to untangle the roots, they'll just break off. As your plants get older and you're able to grow more leaves, every time you rip a leaf, you sort of expose a node or a piece of rhizome. So that is how it builds. With every new leaf, you're building your rhizome to be a stronger plant. So it does get better with time. However, I have received messages from a lot of people saying that when they received their plant and they repotted it, that it immediately declined in health and died within days. If you buy those little baby plants, the starter plants inside of the plugs, you always get really thin, frail roots, and the corms are also held on with really thin umbilical cords. And I know you know what I'm talking about. You never see a rhizome, and that is because those are also tissue cultures. So I just wanted to make this video so that people were aware. Other differences are in the DNA of the plant. For example, I decided to get an infernalis from an online shop because they were really good price, even though I already had my baby infernalis that I got from a trade with Alan. So I decided to pot these babies together, and I gotta be honest, like, I love how big the leaf is. I love how healthy it is, but there's a difference. The tissue culture obviously has no rhizome, where my original plant, you have seen in my highlights on Instagram how this plant had a rhizome, and that is exactly how I saved it from death. If this plant hadn't acclimated to my soil, I wouldn't have been able to save it, and it would have died immediately. The chances of survival are 50-50. I have lost so many plants that are tissue cultures recently that makes me not like tissue cultures. And there's also differences in the color. This plant can look purple under direct light if you shine a light on it. This plant never looks purple. It is all green, and it never really gets that shimmery purple that almost makes it look like a cuprea. This is a huge difference that I noticed with the actual DNA of this infernalis tissue culture versus this regular infernalis. I wanted to show you how I purchased some of these rhizomes in the summertime and how huge they are. Like, this is so much plant, you know, and you have a strong base and a big leaf that comes out of that, whereas tissue cultures take time and they're weak when they begin. Thank you so much for watching today's episode about tissue cultures. I hope that you enjoyed it. I would really like to know your feedback and your opinions on what experiences you've had with tissue culture plants, and if you have any questions about your own plants, send me pictures to my Instagram at Lizzie's Jungle. Yeah, let me know in the comments what your experience has been with tissue cultures and what your thoughts are for the future.